Hi, this is Sandi from Apple Cottage, and today we're going to talk about Amaryllis bulbs. I've been growing Amaryllis bulbs for many years, and I like to try to make them bloom twice each year. So I'm just going to tell you the technique that I use to do that. I have them first inside, usually under lights or in a sunny window, and they bloom around Christmas time, first of the year, depending on the bulb. Then I keep them watered. I trim off the stalk that has the flower when it dries up. And then when it gets springtime, I plant them outside. And so there's a couple different things I do depending on if they went outside into the garden or if they stayed in pots the whole time. So I'm going to lower the camera. And you can see this box here. And this is filled with amaryllis bulbs that had been outside. I took them in when it was getting cold and the nights were getting too cold for them, because an amaryllis is really a zone 8 to 10. They grow them in Florida year round. But if you protect them, you can have them all year round too. So after I've cut off the stalk, I usually trim back some of the leaves. When it's nice enough outside, I plant them out in the yard, in the garden. They want to have a spot that they get warm, early sunshine, but in the afternoon when it's really the heat of the day, it's too hot for them. And so then you want them in a place that's protected from that afternoon sun. So I have them over by my little greenhouse. And so when the heat, the most of the heat from the sun is, it's being shaded by the greenhouse. And so that seems to work okay. Now this year, I had a lot of new growth, but I didn't have any flowers this summer. But I think it was because we had such a cold, wet summer. It was warm enough for them to stay alive, but it wasn't warm enough for them to really flourish. So I take them in when it starts to get cold. I knock off all the dirt that's around them, and then I just put them in a box with a lid so it's completely dark, and I just store them for a month, month and a half. The bulbs still stay really firm, and as you can see, some of them are starting to grow. And so it's a perfect time for me to pot them back up. But because they haven't had any water, there's a few things I have to do. First, I start examining them. And I am going to cut off any of those extra long, straggly roots that it has. I still want it to have a good root system, but anything that looks damaged, it looks old, I'm just going to trim those off, okay? And then I'm going to first set them, let me lower this, into this bucket, this tub. And I'm going to line all of them in the one box and put them over here as I go to, I'm going to trim them up, and when they're trimmed, I'm going to set them over here. And when they get the whole box filled up, I have a bucket of water, and I'm going to fill the tub at 1/2 inch of water. So it's basically covering the roots, but it's not really doing anything to the bulb. And I'm going to leave that there for 6 to 12 hours. And I'm just going to let the bulbs just rehydrate themselves, and then they'll be ready to pot up. So I'll do all the potting. I'll attach it to this video, but it'll be a little bit later on. And I'm down in my where we have our wood stove, so it's always warm, even though we're not even running a wood stove today. The concrete gets warm, and this whole room stays real warm, and the amaryllises will like it. Now behind me, I have different amaryllises that I actually had in the house the whole time. And I like to, on the pot, like this is a red lion. So I just write on the pot what it is. I have red ones, really dark red ones, red and white ones that have just a tiny edge of red around each petal of the flower, and one that's a little speckled. So when I go to do these ones, it's a little bit different. Now these have had moisture the whole time, and so I don't really need to hydrate them, but there are some things I need to do. So I'm going to take that out of the pot, And I'm going to lower the camera a little bit so it's easier for you to see. And I'm just going to do it right here in this pot. Now, see how I'm breaking off all the soil from around there? And as you can see, it has a baby. So this amaryllis is making another amaryllis. And so, it'll take a little while, a few years before it ever blooms. Things I like to do when I'm I want to take all this papery stuff off my amaryllis. So I'm just going to put that in the pot. So that looks pretty good. Take a little bit more off the top part. It's just extra, it's just going to biodegrade. Okay, so I have the dirt off. I'm going to look at the roots and see how they're doing. I am just going to trim a couple that are just too long. Now, people say that you should put it in a pot that's 2 inches wider than your amaryllis because they like to be root bound. I do find that true. And later on in the video, I'm going to show you 3 test pots that I did where I let them be in a much larger pot than what they suggest. And we're going to pull that out of the soil, and we're going to just see how the root systems compare to the ones that are really confined. Okay, now I am going to just gently break that off. Okay, has a little bit of root onto it. And so when I pot that up, this is going to start a new amaryllis plant. I don't know if you can see those roots. See, it has its own little roots. You can see where it was attached to the mom. But that will heal up and that'll be okay. But nice, solid. I don't need to pre-soak this at all. It'll be totally fine. But all the ones in the box over here, I'm going to just take some time and I'm going to stack them all in here. I'm going to stop the video for just that little bit, and then I'll come back and I'll show you when I'm adding the water to it. Okay, so we're back. And I've taken all of those amaryllis bulbs that were in the box that I had been just letting sit in the dark, and I trimmed them all up. I put them down here in this big tub. Now, if you are a lover of amaryllis and you really want to have some, but you just can't afford it, the thing to do is watch for after Christmas, because after Christmas, Walmart, your co-ops, Tractor Supply, all those different places that have stocked amaryllis, for the most part, they usually don't sell them all. And they just keep going down and down in price. In fact, I got, I think, almost all of these ones that are in this tub at our local co-op after Christmas. It was in January, so they had been sitting drying in those boxes the whole time, and they made beautiful amaryllis flowers, and they were only 50 cents a piece. So, some people think that an amaryllis, after it blooms at Christmas, they got it for a present. It's just a toss bulb. They don't do anything. They just figure they'll buy another one next year. But why? Because those bulbs keep getting larger. The first year that it flowers, you may get 3 flowers, which is spectacular. But when you start getting 4, 5, and 6 flowers on one amaryllis bulb, it is just the most beautiful thing you've ever seen. And so I'm going to, during the video, I am going to splice it a little bit and put in some pictures of my amaryllises that bloomed last year. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to move the camera down so you can see me pouring the water in. And what I want to do is really just cover the roots, just so that they can rehydrate themselves. And so I'm going to move the camera down so you can watch that. This is just regular water. It doesn't have any fertilizer or anything like that. And I'm just going to start pouring it. It's been sitting outside, so it's got some little leaf parts and stuff like that. But that's totally okay. So I'm going to let that just spread through the tub and see if I need to add any more. Because you really want about a ½ inch. And I think we're okay. And I wanted to show you these little amaryllises. These are not baby amaryllises. These are amaryllises that are from seed. I cross-pollinated different ones. I crossed my red ones with my white amaryllis, and I just hand-pollinated them. Then I saved the seeds, and I went through the process that you do to get the seeds to grow. The seeds are like flat discs, and they float on water, and they start to grow. Actually, they send a root out and then a leaf out, and they're very slow to grow. I think these are year and a half old, but I'm very excited about that because you never know what you might get when you cross-pollinate. So I'm going to make sure that they're in some water, and I have several of those, so I'm going to make sure all of them get a good soak with their roots. If you get an amaryllis that's just spectacular from the seeds, and it's unlike any of the other ones, you actually get to name that amaryllis. So that is an exciting thing. So I'm going to move the water off the table. I'm going to slide this over. And then we're going to talk about some of the amaryllises I have right here. Now, this one right here has completely outgrown its pot. It's been in here for, probably 2 years. It sits on a windowsill. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to gather up the leaves, and I'm just going to cut those off. All those will go into the compost pile. Nothing's wasted. But this bulb has just gotten so huge. It might even be a little hard to get out. So let me adjust the camera just a little bit. And I'm going to work it out. There we go. Look at that mass of roots. Really, I should have put in a new pot probably a year ago, because that is just a mass of roots, and I'm going to have to trim those all up, which is okay. You know, they bloom so well when they're root bound, and this is definitely root bound. But I'm going to knock off all that extra flakes that were around the bulb. It's just from it growing, but it's a massive bulb. Now, I am going to set that right here, and I want to do some comparison. Okay, so I'm going to set this over here. Now, they've always told me that a bulb should always be only 2 inches wider, so basically 1 inch on each side from the size of your amaryllis bulb. But I wanted to see for myself, because honestly, I don't really believe everything I read on the internet. Shocking! Okay, so I'm going to take this out. Now this amaryllis bulb has been in there for just over 2 years. And as you see, there's a lot of space between it. But I just wanted to see, because when I plant them outside, the end ones especially aren't, the roots aren't compacted. They're not root bound. They still grow, they still flower, so I just wanted to see what would happen. So let's take this one out and see what it does. Now, the roots are much more spread out, but they look healthy. They don't have a lot of little roots though, which is interesting. Usually they have a lot of fibrous roots, these little tiny roots, where this one, it has large roots, but not very many tiny roots. So that gives me a sign that probably they really do like to be forced into a container that's really probably too small for them. But they do look real solid. They have some little roots on there. But look at the size difference. This one has grown so much larger, and this one was in the pot a little teeny bit longer. So that's an interesting fact. Now, when I go to test, I'm not just going to test it in one pot, because your results may not be true. So I actually did it in 3 pots. So let's see what our results are from the other 2. These were all planted the same day. They basically all get the same light, the same fertilizer schedule. So let's shake this one out. This one too, about the same size as the other one. A little bit taller and a little bit thicker. Now these are the types of roots that I really want to see. Fat roots with the little side shoots. And it has some, but certainly not as much as the big one. Okay? So let's put that down. And we have a third one. We'll trim off all the foliage. That too will go into the compost pile. And as you can see, basically the same amount of space that these other 2 had too. So we're going to start to pull. I'm going to break off all that papery stuff around the bulb. Set that down. And let's compare that to the other 2. Now this one has the least amount of roots. And I don't think this one flowered last year either, where these 2 did. So that's very interesting. All 3 of them get the same light from the same window, same soil, same water. They're close to the same, but this one in the middle is definitely more beefier. Okay, so I'm going to set those to the side. Now this is one that sat in a west window instead. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, no, a west window. The other ones are south windows. But it definitely was in a smaller pot. So let's take that and look at these lovely roots. Now, this soil is moist because I water these because they sit in the sun and I don't want them to dry out that far. This one was planted when these ones were planted too. So about 2.5 years. And so we're just breaking that up. Lovely roots. I'm going to take some of that papery stuff off so you can see the bulb more. But wonderful roots. They have the thick ones plus the little ones that are coming off to collect all the water and nutrients. So I have to say both these 2 are the most prosperous ones, root-wise and size-wise. Now these last ones that I have are actually babies off of these 5. And so I'm going to trim them off. They had at different times shot up babies. These are all in a south window too. I'm going to take that and I'll put the pot down here. So these are babies from last year. And they have just grown really well for being babies. You know, offshoots of the other ones. They were in a small container, a terracotta pot. Pull some of those dried leaves off. But a fabulous root system. And that's what we want. So that's exciting. And as we go, we're just going to look at the other ones. And they did, you know, they shot babies out at different times. So not all of them are going to be as old as some of them. So I'm going to take my scissors. I'm cutting up all these extra. But just beautiful roots. Now, this one is a little older than this one. You can tell a little bit by the size and by the root system. This is one more. Cut those leaves off. And we are just gonna break that flaky, papery stuff. Now this one, not as much root system, but it does have some nice fibrous roots in there. So when we repot it, I think it will really do well this year too. And then our very last one, which I find very unusual, because this is a baby, but the baby has a baby, which is unusual. I shouldn't have a baby that's a baby. Okay? So let's first cut off all those extras. I shouldn't have babies until they get bigger. But this is just one of those unusual ones, so I saved that for last. And I'm going to break that off. So, and this is about 2 years old. Not quite 2 years old. I'm going to break off all those extra papery. And I should be able to, because this baby is a little bit bigger, I should be able to just tease it out. There. So as you can see, it's not a huge bulb. You know, it's a little bit smaller than this one and a little bit bigger than this other one, a little bit smaller than this one, which were all the other babies. But I just found it so interesting when a baby had a baby. So we're going to plant those up too. Now usually I plant them in just pots. I can move them any place in the house or the yard that I want to then, and so that's been kind of fun. Let me throw all those away. But this year, I thought, I'm going to do something different. And so I brought in some of my long pots from outside. And they do have some drainage holes in them. I've used these to plant flowers and all kinds of stuff for years. And they last pretty well. Some of the things I do is some people will say to put rocks in the bottom. Some people say not to. I like to put things that will biodegrade eventually. I like to put little sticks, pieces of wood. If I'm going to use the soil again and the horticulture grit can help with a plant that needs a lot of drainage, then I don't mind putting the stones in there. But if not, then I have to pick them out, and I don't want to have to do that because I recycle my potting soil. When I take all my pots that had annuals in them, the next spring I dump them all into the wheelbarrow, some at a time because I have way too many to do it all at once, and I add 1/3 compost. So if I had 2 5-gallon buckets full of the potting soil from the year before, I'm adding 1 gallon of compost to it, and I mix it all up. And so I never have to throw that away. I just keep reusing it over and over again, and it works real well for me. So today I'm actually going to just use some of my kindling. So I'm going to come over and grab some of that. So they're just pieces that I would burn in the wood stove. And I'm just going to lay some of that in here. It will make it so that I have good drainage. Plus I have holes in the bottom, so that will help with the drainage too. But since they're going to be inside for a while, I actually will have to put a tray underneath of them because I don't want it on my windowsill or on the floor, depending where I place them. And then I I have about 4 pieces in there. Try to get it as flat as I can. Let me see that. So I'm going to put this one over here. And then I can start adding my soil. Now, I'm not going to waste any of that soil that was in those pots. So I'm going to put that in there first, because it will sprinkle around those pieces of wood. If it would get too wet, the water would seep down underneath that wood, kindling wood. And so it wouldn't get my amaryllis soggy. Now when you use soil, I wouldn't use garden soil inside your house. But I buy a potting mix. It's called Kellogg. It's a family business. I like that. I use eco compost or compost that I've made myself. But I've used most of the compost from my compost bin, so now I had to buy some compost because there's things I want to pot up in the wintertime. So when you're planting your amaryllis bulbs, I'm going to plant them as a just as a line. I'm just going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in this pot. Oh, sorry, you're not seeing my head. Ha. And I am only going to have the soil go up to about right here on the bulb. About 1/3 of the bulb will be under. Some people say half and half. I like about 1/3. I guess that's probably personal preference. So let's just set those in there. Let's slide that and see if you can see it a little bit better. And I'm going to spread out these roots. I might only be able to get 5 in here, or 4 in here instead of 5. Unless I use one of the little ones. Let me put this little baby in there too. The baby of the baby. And we're just spreading those roots outwardly. And so really they will become root bound because I have 5 of them in here. And that's what I want them to become root bound. So can you see all 5 of those in there? And then it's just a process of putting soil on there, or a mixture of compost. I have some soils left in those big pots, but I am going to stop the video for a second. I'm going to grab some of my compost and some of my potting mix so that we can do a mixture of both of those. Okay, so here is my compost that I get when I have to buy something. It's called Eco Compost. You can get it at Home Depot. The Kellogg's potting soil you can get at Home Depot also. So I'm just going to take my scissors. Just open that up a little bit. And we are going to put it around our bulbs. First I'm going to put some compost. And I'm just sprinkling it over all those roots. So with this, I want all the roots covered. I want them to really start off well. So I'm just going around and I'm putting that compost. Now some people would put the compost on top, but I really want them to have a real good boost, and so I am going to do it this way. I want to cover it so I don't see any of the roots at all. Get over on this side. Make sure they're standing up the way you want them to, tucking all those roots in. Now, I'm going to press that down, kind of firm it in. A little bit more over here. Now I have 4 more of these types of tray pots, and So I think that should be close to enough to do all of mine. One of them is a lot longer than the other one. I'll make sure I show that when I get all the way done. And so they're all firmed in. So the compost is really topping the very base of that bulb. Okay, I'm gonna set that down. And then we're gonna use some potting soil. Now, when I bought this potting soil in the compost the other day, we had been cold and it literally was frozen. Like frozen solid, and it had so much moisture in it, it was incredibly heavy. But I set it in this room right here with the compost, or with the compost and the wood stove, and it just thawed that out real nicely. Okay, so we are about a third of the way. And I'm just going to grab one more thing. And I get this, let me move the camera up. I get this at Tractor Supply. It's called Real Soil. It's really a potting mix that has organic worm castings in it, peat moss, and natural topsoil. So I like to top dress things with it. So I'm just gonna sprinkle it around. It just has so many good things in there. Microorganisms. The worm castings have so much nutrients for your plants. And so this is what I like to, on my pots, what I like to top dress with instead of top dressing with the compost. And you don't have to use a lot. It's very fine and powdery like, a good tilth. So that's the first tray done. So you can see it's dark, rich soil. I will water it. And what I like to do is, days ago, I poured water into these jugs because it's just tap water. And honestly, Gillette has the worst water in the total United States. It's seriously, it has horrible flavor. I mean, it has nutrients in it. I mean, it's not bad for you to drink. It just tastes horrible. So I never drink tap water. In fact, most of the time I buy water even for my cooking, and I add that instead. And so we always buy this Pure Life. You get it at Walmart. But when we did research, it was the top third best water you could buy, bottled water you could buy in the United States. And so that's what I use. So when I'm watering my plants inside, I don't want that chlorine. So I fill up these jugs and I just line one side of the kitchen cabinets with all these, and I just let them sit anywhere from 2 or 3 days to a week or more. And then I am going to add some organic grow plant food. You just shake it up and turn it upside down, and it 1, 2. It smells like fertilizer, but it's organic, so it's okay. And I am just going to settle that down a little bit by adding some water. I'm not adding a lot because I don't have my tray underneath of it and I don't want it running all over my table. But this will give you an idea. I'm not watering on the bulb. I'm watering around the bulb. And so then this tray is ready. It's small enough that I can sit it. It's small enough that I can sit it on my ledges of my windows. And when the amaryllises start to grow, they're a large plant. And so what I do is I have these little stakes. They're made for your flowers. And what I do is I literally stick them in, and sometimes I have to have Joe cut them off a little bit because sometimes they're too tall. But I want them sticking up above the amaryllis at least 12 to 15 inches. And so either I have to bend some of them, depends on my pot that I have. Some pots are big and I can just jam them all the way down into the bottom, or I have to bend them or cut them. But I want them so that, and I want to place them right next to the amaryllis. And I want to put that in there right away. So I'm not, if I did it later, I might be pressing in and breaking a root. And so I'm going to do that right away. And they'll just sit in there. And as it sends the flower up, I'm going to make sure that flower comes right through here. And that way, when the flower gets heavy, it's not bending over. And so I have a lot of these, so I'm going to do them on every single tray. So at the end of the video, I'll show you all the trays that I did, and with all the wires in them. If you don't have these wires, you could easily use like a colored bamboo. Excuse me. Colored bamboo, and you can use some twine to tie it on there so it doesn't tip over. So I'm going to stop the video. I'm going to plant up my other ones. I'm going to wait for my 6 hours to 12 hours for the ones that were dry so they can plump up. So really I'll probably finish the video tomorrow, and I'll put it all together. And if you have questions about amaryllis, put them in the comments below. If you grow amaryllis and you do have some tricks, share those in the comments below. Make sure you like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and I hope you have a great day. Tomorrow I'm going over to South Dakota. Our youngest granddaughter, her birthday was the other day, Nisa. There's a little video of her, me being silly to her. And we're going to her birthday party, so I might video when I give her that little hamster and see what she thinks of it in real life, because it'll repeat anything she says. She doesn't even have to say words. Any sound it will repeat. So I'm kind of excited about that. So I'm going to pot these up, and I'll put the video all together, and I hope you have a great day. All the amaryllises are potted up. In the pots that I did my testing that I only had one before, I put 4 amaryllises in each one so that they could get root bound. So I have 3 of those. I had to go grab 4 more pots out of my backyard, some more terracottas for those ones. But I have them all potted up. The ones with the trays are like this, but even the one that is the longer tray, because I used some of the really big Amaryllis bulbs, it only has 4 or 5 in it also. So I think it was a good day at work. I'll keep you posted as they start to grow. I did water them all in. I will let them sit overnight, and then I'll move them to their permanent place and put the stakes in there. So if you have questions about amaryllis, leave them in the comments. If you like this video and you learned something from it, please like it, share it, subscribe to my channel. And I have 41 large size amaryllis bulbs and 8 little babies. So I thought that was a good day of potting up amaryllis, and I look forward to all the beautiful color this winter.